Hello marvelous viewers, and welcome to another marvelous video. For today's origin story, we will be taking a trip back to the early 1930s. The world is at a cusp of war of the likes of which we have never seen, while spies, agents, and gangsters roam freely on the streets. It is in those dark times that we find the roots of our hero, the Lobster. This masked vigilante from the Hellboy comics is probably one of the most mysterious figures to ever exist in comics. With no known alter ego or personal backstory, the origins of this hero are somewhat vague. However, the hero's quest for justice is still seen as an inspiration for heroes, including Hellboy himself. A creation of Hellboy creator Mike Mignola, the Lobster first graced the pages of Dark Horse Comics in 1999. In the Hellboy universe, the Lobster story has been fictionalized in comics and books. Since then, the infamous Claw, as the Lobster is often called, has been serving justice on the gritty streets of New York City. Through this video, we will dive even deeper into the Lobster's origins as well as his story arc to understand the secrets behind this elusive vigilante. Before we move ahead, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. This might be a small click for you, but to us, it means an awful lot. Now, with no further delay, let's go! Origins. The Lobster first appeared on the streets of NYC back in the early 30s. Initially, the mysterious Claw began preying on gangsters and criminals, branding them with the phosphorescent claw symbol on their foreheads. This led to massive hysteria among the Big Apple's criminal class, especially in the higher echelons. It is said that during his war with organized crime, Lobster took down as many as 250 operatives between 1932 and 1938. Lobster's list of victims included some extremely reputable gangsters, which led him to attracting the attention of various nefarious mobsters. Over the years, the Lobster was featured in numerous iconic story arcs that shine with a greater light upon this mysterious vigilante. One of the Lobster's earliest enemies was the notorious gang lord Arnie Wald. In 1932, numerous gangsters from Wald's gang started appearing with the feared claw symbol on their temples. It is revealed that the perpetrator of these crimes against the city's criminals is none other than the mysterious Lobster. This tension between Arnie Wald and Lobster forms the foundation of the 5 issues miniseries The Burning Hand, which is set in one of the earliest phases of the Lobster's career. Frustrated with the Lobster's repeated attacks on his men and after escaping an assault himself, Wald begins to see the Lobster as a supernatural specter. This is a testament to the sheer terror the Lobster was able to inspire in his enemies, even in his early career. Intimidated by the Lobster's seemingly otherworld power, Arnie uses his acquaintance Mr. Isog to hire some help. This help arrives in the form of a mysterious Siamese woman named Kamala and her undead German spouse, the First Black Flame. What follows is an intense battle between the two sides, as Wald uses Kamala and the Black Flame powers to find the Lobster's hidden lair. Despite the overwhelming odds, the Lobster was able to stand defiantly against this enemy ambush and managed to seize the day by the end of the storyline. Not only does this story delve into the beginning of the Lobster's career, but it also provides us glimpses of the men who helped him in his quest against crime. Another important facet of the Lobster's journey is revealed in the miniseries The Iron Prometheus, where we are introduced to the vigilante's greatest nemesis, Memnon Saw. Saw is shown to be an ancient sorcerer with plans to take over the world. In 1937, Saw kidnapped Professor Kyriakos Galaragas and his daughter Helena in order to get the plans for the scientist's Vril energy suit. The VES is powered by the mystical Anim's Fork, which would enable the sorcerer to raise an army of dragons to take over the world. Fortunately, Galaragas' assistant Jim Sachs is able to escape with the suit before Saw's attack. Soon, Sachs and Lobster join hands to take down the mysterious villain who abducted the doctor and his daughter. However, the heroes aren't able to save the scientist, and even Sachs himself is killed in the ensuing battle. Due to the Anim Fork's mysterious properties, Sachs is soon reincarnated and ends up killing most of Saw's men. Although the Lobster shoots Memnon Saw, the magician still manages to escape. This initial confrontation would spark the beginning of a very long and bitter enmity over the course of which the Lobster would suffer many losses and tragedy. The Lobster's story arc. Now that we are all caught up with the Lobster's beginning as a crime fighter, let's look at what happened to him after his first encounter with Memnon Saw. After their failure to capture the mystical villain, the Lobster and his allies began to track Saw. However, all their efforts seemed to be in vain, as each attempt to find Saw ended in gruesome tragedies. Owing to this, the Lobster's allies dwindled rapidly, leaving him with a lone comrade, Harry McTell. These losses led to the Lobster introspecting and calling off the pursuit of Saw. In addition to this, the Lobster was also recruited by the US government as an independent agent. In 1938, the Lobster was tasked with investigating a series of heinous murders, the victims all of whom were renowned scientists working at the firm Zinco Davis. From an old photograph, the Lobster traces the crimes of the only remaining scientist in the picture, Stanley Korn. It turns out that Stanley was somewhat of a mad scientist and had been fired from Zinco Davis owing to his strange experiments on human brains. These experiments ended up providing Stanley with strange powers. Soon, Stanley's brain, now disembodied and superpowered, attacks the Lobster, who somehow manages to emerge triumphant. In one of the Lobster's last missions, the masked hero was assigned to prevent the Nazis from launching a space capsule. Though the hero tried his best to stop the projectile from launching, his efforts proved insufficient in the end. Despite Lobster shutting the doors of the launch facility, the capsule still managed to burst through. In the resultant blast, the Lobster and most of the other inhabitants of the facility, Hunt Castle, were annihilated. However, as it turns out, Lobster would end up completing his last mission even after his death. In 2001, more than half a century after Lobster's death, Hellboy and Roger would make their way to the haunted remains of the Hunt Castle. Here, the BRPD operatives would encounter the Lobster's spirit, which would prove essential in stopping the Herman von Clements and Rasputin's plot. In an oddly melancholic moment, Hellboy and Roger carry home Lobster's bullet-ridden body and finally provide the vigilante with a proper burial. Despite his remains being at rest, Lobster's spirit remains as restless as ever and has repeatedly appeared to the heroes to solve their problems. Most of the cases revolve around the unsuccessful missions that the Lobster took part of during his time. When the Lobster's old adversary, Menman Saw, reared his head again in the modern era, the Lobster was forced to possess the psychic Johann Kraus and revealed his past with the sorcerer. With this information, a team conducted a seance and received the very first clues regarding the villain from the vigilante spirit. Utilizing the secret information from Lobster's missions in the 30s, the BRPD traced the magician to his base. At the moment of Saw's defeat, Lobster's spirit repossessed Johann and finally saw his greatest enemy fall, albeit many, many years after the hero's own death. After the mission was over, the Lobster was able to achieve some semblance of peace himself, though his idea of peace is quite unique. Staying true to his character, the Lobster's spirit decided to stay behind in the Hunt Castle, where he rejoined the ghostly inhabitants. It is assumed that Lobster is probably pretty happy in his new afterlife home, as it is crawling with Nazis, and the vigilante can hunt those monsters down for all of eternity. Powers and abilities. The Lobster is evidently one of the most skilled hand-to-hand combatants in the Hellboy comics. On multiple occasions, the vigilante has taken down superpowered enemies just using his physical attributes and tactical knowledge. The Lobster's chosen method of delivering justice is quite bloody, and he has no qualms about killing his enemies and carries multiple pistols to achieve his goals. Besides firearms, the Lobster is also extremely proficient in using different melee weapons like swords and spears. Though the vigilante possesses no supernatural skills or powers, his opponents have often considered him mystical owing to his knack for escaping lethal attacks unscathed. Throughout his storyline, the vigilante has survived gunshots and explosions that would have reduced a normal human being to a smoldering pile of ashes. One of the Lobster's most iconic weapons is the heated claw-shaped brand that he hides in his glove. This symbol of the claw serves as a calling card for the Lobster. In his later appearances, when the Lobster shows up as a spirit, he exhibits the ability to shift his form between tangible and intangible at a moment's notice. He also seems to possess some sort of invisibility or teleportation that allows the vigilante to appear in places that are impossible to reach. The unstoppable vigilante carries his weapons even in death and seems to exhibit an uncharacteristic aloofness while in this form. Though the Lobster is usually hesitant to join battles in his spirit form, he does pop in to help our heroes every once in a while. Owing to this versatile set of abilities, the Lobster has evolved into one of the most powerful ghosts in the Hellboy universe. Marvelous appearances of the Lobster in other media. Due to the Lobster's success in the comics, the vigilante has made multiple appearances in other forms of media associated with the Hellboy franchise. The Lobster was the central character of Thomas East Nagoski's 2009 novel, Lobster Johnson, The Satan Factory. Moreover, he also appears in the video game Hellboy, Science of Evil, where he's voiced by the legendary Bruce Campbell. It is rumored that Guillermo del Toro was keen on having the character feature in his Hellboy films, especially eventually in the third sequel. However, Del Toro exited the franchise as director after the second film, and audiences had to wait till the 2019 reboot to catch a glimpse of the historic wartime hero. Though 2019's Hellboy is inferior to its predecessors in many respects, it did provide us with the only appearance of the Lobster, who was portrayed by Thomas Hayden Church. But due to the critical and commercial failure of the reboot, it's unlikely that we will see Church's Lobster in the future. Despite his absence from the live-action films, the Lobster did get his due in the 2007 animated feature Blood and Iron, where he appeared in a flashback cameo. It was also teased in the post-credit teaser that the Claw would make a much larger impact in the sequel. However, this project remains lost in production hell. Marvelous verdict. Though he remains relatively unknown outside the Hellboy fandom, the Lobster is still a very essential component of the globally renowned franchise. Not only does he serve as a hero figure for the titular hero, he is also a complex and well-rounded character in his own right. Even though his penchant for murder and mayhem may be a step too far for some audiences, it is still undeniable that the Lobster has an unwavering sense of justice. Criminals today should be glad that at least they don't have to be afraid of a shadowy figure emerging from the dark and branding their faces anymore. So, what do you think? Are you hungry for more Lobster appearances, just like us? Please let us know in the comments below. That's it for today, and we will see you soon with another marvelous video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel in order to stay updated with more such marvelous content. Well then, have a good one, and take care.